Hi guys, before we get to the distillation part of this course, let's first quickly talk about still maintenance and keeping our stills clean. Now, if you buy a still for the first time, and it's not the first time you're using the still, it's just arrived, I know you really want to use it right now, you can't wait, you've been waiting for it to arrive, you can't just immediately take it and start running fermentation through it. You first need to prep the still, you first need to clean the still. Now, there is a whole article on our website in the article section about cleaning a still for first use, which gives you the instructions in detail how to clean a still for the first time, but just quick and dirty. First thing you need to do, and this is true for any still, whether it's a copper Olympic still, whether it's a stainless steel still, doesn't matter what type of still. When you get the still, the first thing you do is you need to wash that still with dishwashing liquid. In South Africa, most commonly probably sunlight liquid or whatever, but any dishwashing liquid you can use to wash the still out, or wash the equipment out. That is to remove the manufacturing oils. It's just a normal oil, it's just part of the manufacturing process, lubricants and so forth, just residue left over on the stills, but it will give a bad taste, it will give a bad flavor to the product if you just leave it on the still and use it as is. So we wash it with dishwashing liquid in order to remove those manufacturing oils. Now you take the still and you assemble the still, and inside you prep for a vinegar run. Now the vinegar run is there to clean the copper out. It's basically an acid clean, and please note, commercial distillers won't do a vinegar run, they will do a proper CIP. I'm not going to go into detail for that now. In any case, if you buy the still from us, our technicians will come out and do the CIP as part of your training and as part of the setup of your distillery in any case. But if you're at home, now you need to improvise. And the vinegar run is an improvised CIP, at least an improvised acid clean. So you take your boiler and you fill it halfway with your vinegar solution. Now the vinegar solution will be 50-50 water and vinegar. So 5-liter boiler, 2.5 liters of vinegar solution, that means 1.25 liters of vinegar and 1.25 liters of water. You put that inside the boiler, you assemble the still, seal it up, and now you do your run. Now the vinegar run does two things. Firstly, it allows you to check the still for any possible leaks, and secondly, the acidity of the vinegar solution then cleans out the inside of the still and cleans the copper as well. So you're running your condenser at this time, so you will condense that liquid and it comes out. After you've done the vinegar run, you take the still apart, you rinse everything out. Now you're going to do a steam clean. Now, to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter in which order you do this. If you do the steam clean first and then the vinegar run, or the vinegar run first and then the steam clean, I personally just prefer to do the steam clean after the vinegar run to remove any residue or flavor impact from the vinegar run that might be left in the still. So again, we fill the still halfway with water, we assemble the still, and now we start it up. We boil the water, the steam will rise up and go through, but now we do not run water through the condenser. We keep the condenser water closed. If there is some water left in the condenser, it's fine, it'll heat up quite quickly. But what we actually want is we want steam to come out here. Basically, that vapor pressure just pushing out any residue, any solids, any particulates that might be in the system, just pushing that out so that there's no contamination. So once the steam comes out, you let steam run for about 5 minutes, and then you turn on the cooling water in the condenser just to condense it again. Now that steam condenses to liquid and it literally flushes the pipes. After you don't run it dry. Obviously, you never run a boiler dry because that's going to damage the boiler. So if you have, in this case, 2.5 liters of water in here, recover about a liter of that and you're fine. You can now turn it off, and now your still is ready for your first use. Now that's what you do the first time you use the still, and there is nothing wrong with doing this as a normal cleaning habit. There's nothing wrong with that. If you do it once a month or once every quarter, doesn't matter. Depends on how often you use the still. If the still has been standing for quite a while, if for some reason you haven't been using it for quite a while, yeah, then do it again. Exactly the same protocol: sunlight, vinegar, steam, dishwashing liquid, vinegar and steam, and then your still is ready to use again. But even if you don't want to go through that full clean, there is some maintenance cleaning you will need to do from time to time. Now, if you think back to our distillation overview in our Introduction to Distilling course or Introduction to Distilling section of the C10 comprehensive course, you would remember that the reason why we use copper in a still is to remove sulfites. from the fermentation, sulfites that form there, specifically hydrogen sulfide, which smells bad, tastes bad, we don't want it in the final product. So the sulfides bind with the copper, so the copper acts as a filter to remove those sulfides. But what happens with that, well, firstly, it's not just limited to the interior of the still. Sulfides are all around us, part of pollution. So you can see that this still doesn't look that nice and shiny anymore. It doesn't look that clean anymore. And it is about 10 years old, 12 years old, but the reason for that is because of pollution. The copper extracts the sulfides out of the air around us as well, and that's why it tarnishes, gets darker. Inside, it's a whole different story, a whole different class, because, and I hope you can see this nicely on the video, on the interior you can see it gets very dark, almost black on the inside. Sometimes it looks like a dark purple, and that's because of all the sulfides that this copper has now extracted from fermentations over a period of time. And obviously the more sulfides in the fermentation, the faster that happens, that compaction happens. Now if the entire, all the copper is covered with sulfides, that means there's no exposed copper that will allow you to actually extract the sulfides from the next fermentation you're distilling through it. So we need to clean this copper from time to time. And the way we do that is with an acid clean. Now, on a industrial scale, if you're a commercial distillery, still like this one in the background, this multi-column still, that's got a built-in CIP system. So each one of these plates actually has a spray ball. So in the boiler, we make the acid solution, gets pumped through the spray balls and sprayed on each level, and that's how we clean it in that case. In the case of a fractionating reflux column still, and we've got one standing in the corner, but I don't think the camera will pick it up now, but in the case of a fractionating reflux column still, where it's the modular T sections with the copper plates, we have to take it apart, take the copper mesh, because there's copper mesh in the vapor path as well, take the copper mesh out, take the copper plates out, and from time to time clean it exactly the way we're doing it now, by making an acid solution and then putting the copper inside. Now the way we do this is we take a bucket and with hot water, just tap hot water, doesn't have to be boiling water, but hot tap water from your geyser is sufficient. And then inside this water we're going to throw citric acid. Now our preferred dosage is about 100 grams of citric acid on 20 liters of water. You can probably use less, you just need to let it soak longer, but I'm always in a rush, so I want to get it clean as quickly as possible without having to wait. So it's literally as complicated as opening the packet and pouring it into the water. Now, this is acidic, but it's not dangerously acidic. As you can see, just mix it with your hand, or luckily this has cooled down a little bit, otherwise I might be burning my hand here now, but you can just mix it with a spoon as well. So, once it's dissolved in there, it's as simple or as complicated as taking the copper and just putting it inside. So, it's not a very big bucket, so we'll probably do it in 2 batches. But I'm totally submerging the boiler in order to make sure that it's filled with water on the inside as well, and you can actually just, as I'm doing now, scoop a little bit in there. And just to show you how quick and easy this is, you can already see the difference just from that couple of seconds that it's been in here. But I'm going to leave it in longer, especially on the inside. I want to make sure that I remove all the copper or all the sulfide from the inside as well. So I'm just filling the boiler completely to make sure everything's coming into contact. And bucket's obviously not big enough to put this in completely, so I'm first going to put it in to make sure that the vapor chamber is soaked, and then after a while I'll turn it around to make sure that the rest of the vapor path or the swan's neck is also soaked properly. And it's actually going to be quite cool now to see it, because in a little while we're not going to have you sit there and just watch it soak, but in a little while I'll take it out and you'll actually see the line between the soaked section and the unsoaked section. We're also going to clean the condenser. It's not really necessary. It is still necessary to clean it from time to time, but it's not as important as the vapor path and the boiler. Those are the 2 most important sections in terms of sulfite removal, but I like my stills to look clean in its totality and not just parts of it being clean. So we're going to let this soak for a little while, approximately 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll get back and show you what it looks like then. Right, guys, so it's been about 7 minutes that this has now been in the water. So let's see what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to take the vapor chamber out first, and you can now clearly see the difference between the section that was inside the this acid solution and the part that wasn't. You can see there's a big difference there in terms of the color and how clean it is. Actually going pink, kind of a rose pink. Now, one thing that you just need to watch out for now, the inside. And I hope the camera can pick it up. You'll see that it's clean on the inside, but there is a section over here, a patch over here that is kind of more still dark, didn't clean properly, and that's because of the shape. Obviously, you're going to get air bubbles in here. So you need to move it around a couple of times. So we are going to put this back into the water, because obviously this section still needs to be cleaned, and we want to make sure that's cleaned properly as well. But we'll do that just now. The pot on the other, or the boiler on the other hand, is as clean as can be. You can see nice and clean all around, and then on the inside as well. Hopefully the camera can show you what's going on in there, but basically, trust me, it looks the same on the inside as it does on the outside. Now, don't expect it to look like this very long. It's still very active now with the acid on here. So after a while, it'll get a bit more darker, more your traditional golden copper color. And the moment you apply heat as well, very quickly, after you start applying heat, it goes more the golden, darker color. It won't stay this rose pink for very long, for those of you that think it's not a very manly color. It will fade a little bit. So we're going to do the same with the condenser now. We're going to put that in there. Get that nice and clean. Now, you will notice the water, especially if you leave it in there very long, or if it's been very dirty, the water will go a bluish color. That's the copper sulfite. That's actually what's being dissolved off, will turn the water a bluish color. So if that happens, don't stress, not anything wrong with it. That's normal. But that brings us now to another topic, and that's called passivation. So when we passivate, basically what that means is we neutralize the acid that's on here. Because this is now still wet with acid. It's wet with this water solution that we've made, water and citric acid solution. So we need to, ideally need to passivate this just to tone it down, just to get it more neutral again. Because if we don't do that, if it was a very strong acid that you use, and yeah, some people, I know some people use pool acid, for instance, to clean their stills. I don't recommend it, but they do. So if you leave it wet with a very, very strong acid solution like that, what you will find is that you get some pitting, you might get some damage on your copper after a while, but the bigger issue comes in when you actually clean the still, and let's say I use the still right as it is right now, I put in a fermentation, I start distilling. What's going to happen is I'm going to get blue distillate coming out of my still. And that's because of this acid residue that's still inside the pipes. So I'm actually, through distillation, I'm going to strip that blue distillate out, and it's contamination. I can't use that product. Now, it's normally not too big of an issue because that will come out in your heads anyway. But there is a chance there might be a flavor effect that will contaminate the rest of your run as well. So we use potassium carbonate in water, the same potassium carbonate we use to adjust our pH. Some potassium carbonate in water, not as strong as that. Not as strong as the acid, a very, very weak potassium carbonate solution, because if it's too alkaline, you can sometimes make the copper go dark or black. So that happens a lot with caustic. If you remember when we spoke about CIP cleaning, that's why we do the caustic first and then we do the acid, is because the caustic solution can make the copper go black. So a weak potassium carbonate solution in water, just rinse it off with that just to neutralize the acid on the copper again. As I said, however, if you didn't do that, if you forgot to do it, it's not the end of the world. Your heads will probably remove all that blue residue from the inside of your still during a distillation run in any case. Now, just be mindful though, there are two different reasons for blue distillate. If you think back to fermentation overview in the Introduction to Distilling course, or the Introduction to Distilling section of our CTM course, you would remember that I mentioned that if you put too much minerals in a fermentation, especially, and I think I used the example of adding yeast nutrients, sorry, not minerals, but nutrients. By adding nutrients to a grain fermentation, you run the risk of excessive nitrogen, which can also cause blue distillate because the nitrogen turns to ammonia. So if you do get blue distillate, there's two possible or reasons for it. Either you did not passivate and there was still acid residue from the cleaning, or alternatively, you had too much nutrients inside your fermentation. If it's the former, if it's because of acid contamination, then it will start blue and it will stop. It will, just until the residue has been flushed out of the system, then the blue color will disappear and you should be fine to use whatever comes out of the still after that. However, if it's because of excessive nutrients, it's not going to stop. It will continue for quite a while, and then you can just stop the run. You can discard everything that's come out of the still. You can discard everything that's in your still, and you have to then completely take the still apart and clean it properly to remove all of that contamination. So again, another reason to avoid excessive nutrients is to avoid that happening. All right, so we're going to wait for this to soak and finish the cleaning, and then we're going to move on to how do I seal a still.